Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. This is a podcast where we believe that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And where we believe that you have an impact, whether you see it or not. I'm super excited to jump into this topic with you today. And I hope to put some of your hearts at ease and help you see that you are making a difference, even when you question yourself. We're in season 3 of the podcast, where all of the podcasts that we do are about your inner state and helping you to achieve a feeling inside of you as you go through your days that is a little higher and better than you otherwise would have been had you not listened to the podcast. That is the goal. So hopefully we bring that home for you. I want to remind you that we have this little thing in the Hey Mish episode where you can reach out and submit a Hey Mish. And this can look like a lot of things. This can be a tiny little anonymous question that you can submit through email. You can, send it to me on my DMs on Instagram, any way that you can get it to me, and you can make it anonymous when it reaches me, and I can make it anonymous to our community if that's what you desire. You can also come on the podcast. You can be a guest with me, and we can just have a conversation about what it is that you're thinking about, or what it is that you are pondering, or what you might be going through. That would be really fun. And we could do it, in whatever way you feel comfortable with. I'm literally inviting you because I love talking to my audience. You are so important to me. And so anything that I can do to assist you or help you through life, I'm here for that. And can I just tell you that I am really looking forward to this weekend. We are going in to the woods for one day. For one day, we're going to go to the mountain. And we've gone camping this summer and we've done other things. But sometimes I think we forget the gravity and the importance of doing things, even if we can only do them for a short period of time. And we grossly underestimate how good it is for us to be in nature. So I just wanted to give you a little nudge also to make sure that you get out and you enjoy whatever it is that is in your backyard, so to say, whatever it is that is close to you. Just really drink it in and take the time when you're in nature to just be present and feel it. Let it fill up your entire soul. All right, and with that, let's jump into the episode. A little while back, I started having a conversation with some friends, and the topic of making a difference came up, right? Like the question, am I doing enough, or is what I'm doing even making a difference? Right. And so we started to kind of have this conversation. And I realized in this group of women that it was a very common theme for people to wonder if they're making a difference, right? I think when we think a thought, we might think we're the only ones who ever have that thought. Don't you think that's kind of an interesting thing? Until we start talking. And then we go, oh my word, you feel that same thing. And mind you, this was a really incredible group of women, like the kind of women that like bake bread and drop it off at their neighbor's house. Or, think of someone and do something for them, right? So for them to wonder if it's making a difference is a complete shocker to me. Because I, on the flip side, have had the bread delivered to me, or I've had something kind done for me. I'm like, oh my word, that's incredible. But sometimes we fail to say, thank you so much, or that really made a difference. Or even if we do say something, maybe it doesn't land, or maybe everybody else that people are serving don't say something. And it couldn't be like recognized by 4 and one person doesn't. And it just kind of leaves you with that feeling of question. Like, I mean, should I even, am I imposing, or, and when you really understand how much of a need recognition is, you start to get the questioning. So Abraham Maslow stated that recognition is one of the 5 fundamental human needs. Listed in order of importance, it's food, safety, belonging, and recognition. So it is not a want, not a desire, not something that would be nice, but it's a need. It's something that really fulfills us to know that we're making a difference. And so when you understand that gravity, you go, wow, it really is important that we have this conversation, right? So if you're resonating with this topic, hopefully we can share some stories and shed some light and give you a different way to think about whether or not you're making a difference, and just kind of widen the aperture of the lens. We can widen the perspective, right? We can take a mindset check. So I want to start with this story about Dorothy Lang. And this is a story that I heard on the All In podcast, if you listen to that podcast. Dorothy Lang was a photographer during World War II, and she was commissioned to take photos to basically appease the American public of the Japanese American camps, okay, that they had. So there were all of these camps all over America. The moment we went to war, there was kind of this fear, like, oh my word, what if that person is a Japanese spy? So if you were living in the US and you were Japanese during World War II, they created camps. And, for the American public in general to feel good about it, they wanted to hire famous photographers to come in and take photos. Well, when Dorothy Lang went into this camp, she saw that it wasn't everything that they had described. So they had described to the American public that it was like going to summer camp. It was fine. It was luxurious, and it's, a place that feels safe to them. And they wanted the American public to believe that. And she went in and saw sadness. She saw families that had been torn away from what they have built, their homes, their farms. They were losing everything. They weren't provided for well in the camps. It was not the same picture that they were saying that it was, and they wanted her photographs to reflect that. So she went in, and she actually did not feel good at all about what she was seeing and what was happening. And so she started taking pictures that really portrayed what it was like. And her work was actually impounded. So sad. So her work actually never came forward in the time where it would have made a difference, like what she thought. Okay. So in her mind, she thinks, if I can get this news out to the American public, then there will be like a protest and all of these things, and we can change this. We can change this situation. She can sway the public opinion, and that's what her intention was that she went in with. And so I'm sure for her that would have felt really disappointing that she wasn't able to share it the way that she wanted to. But it did come back. And the person that was being interviewed on the podcast was a descendant of someone in the camp, and she had taken photos of that person. And these photos are now on display in an exhibit documenting history. So it came back around. Her work was used and valuable. But it's important to see that sometimes what you're assigned to do isn't for the thing or the time that you're doing it. It's meant for another reason, right? Like, we don't always know the impact that we have while we're in it. I love this classic story called A Glass of Milk. It says, there was a poor boy who would sell newspapers to pay for school. One day he was ravenous and decided to ask for food at the next house he visited. Several people denied him food. However, a girl at one house offered him a glass of milk. She refused to take payment for it. After many years, this girl fell sick. She decided to go to the best doctor in town. The doctor spent months treating her, though she could not afford the service. When she received the hospital bill, it read, "Paid in full with a glass of milk." I love that story because, even if it's somewhat of a wives' tale or a fairy tale kind of story, it helps us understand that sometimes it does take a long time for our good deeds to come back to us. And sometimes we can be just somewhat oblivious to the difference or the impact that we're having, right? Literally that's a very common thing. Like maybe we feel like we're making a little bit of a difference, but we really don't know, the entire scope of what we're doing and what we're providing. There's another story called The Other Side of the Wall. There was a young woman who was fond of gardening. She took great care of her garden. One day she found a plant in a catalog and she decided she wanted to plant it. She planted it at the base of the stone wall in her garden. It grew quickly, but no flowers bloomed on the tree. She thought she would cut it down, but her neighbor called her and thanked her for the beautiful flowers blooming on its vines. She rushes over and realized that the vine had crept through the crevices of the stone wall. The flowers had bloomed generously on the other side. Ooh. Oh, that's so beautiful, right? Just like taking that story in for a moment. Sometimes all of the cultivating and all of the things that we do is done on our side of the fence. And we don't ever see the payoff on the other side, right? Unless someone does tell us about it. But the tricky thing is honestly, people don't always want to tell you how you made a difference. Maybe you kind of saved them in a time that was difficult for them, and even talking about it is hard for them. There was a time when there was a woman in my neighborhood, and we were associated by the church that we both attended, and she was assigned to check in on me often and to, just see that I was doing okay. And that's kind of a neat little program that we can be a part of in our church. And, she would come and visit me. She was literally like a game changer in my life. She would pray for me. I knew she was praying for me. I could feel her prayers. And she just always did the most thoughtful things for me. And one day she came to visit me, and she came with another woman as well. And we were having a conversation about school lunches, because my kids were starting at a school where I needed to pack their school lunches every day. And so we were brainstorming about, what are the different lunches that we can pack that are not going to get old, right? So that we can have a little bit of a rotation instead of just having sandwiches every day. And they started to talk about how if you had thermoses, you could just take hot food. There's so many different things that you could put in a thermos. And we started listing them all, and I started getting really excited. I was like, this is the best idea ever, 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 ever. And so they left. I felt supercharged. And, I sat down to kind of like look up thermoses and where should I buy them. And at the time, you could only get these thermoses for like $30 a piece, I want to say. And times 2, that was $60. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do that. And it was actually a really sad thought for me, because we were in such a tight spot with our finances. And this was something that really kind of hurt my heart. It hurt me really bad, because I recognized that it was just a really good thing that I wanted. It was just a really wholesome desire, and I couldn't give that to my kids. And so it was really hard, but I swallowed this jagged pill, and I took a deep breath, and I got back up on my feet and said, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Later that day, my doorbell rang, and it was a ring and run. No one was there when I got to the door. And I looked down, and wrapped in cellophane with a beautiful, loving note were these two thermoses. You know, that's something that I never even told her for a long time. For a long time. Like, I only recently told her how much of a difference that made for me. And it really did. Like, I was off to the races packing soups and chicken nuggets and bagel bites and all kinds of things that needed to stay warm. It was crazy. Oh, people are amazing. You are amazing. And I know that you do cool things. And it's okay if you don't know how much of an impact it makes. Another situation where you might question your impact is when people cannot even literally see straight. They cannot make sure that the people who are really helping them and giving them assistance on their path are thanked. There's a story of something that happened in my personal life where it was this really heartbreaking story of a woman who was about my age. And at the time, my youngest was 3 years old. And this woman had a 3-year-old little girl, and her husband passed away. And I was getting ready for the funeral that morning. And of course, everybody's just heartbroken over this situation. You know, anytime a parent dies before their children, or especially even like out of the house, I feel like that is just like a special place in my heart for people who go through that. But that morning I was getting ready, and I had this overwhelming impression that I needed to go and buy lockets, matching lockets, mother and daughter lockets, and put a picture of dad, you know, husband and dad, in the locket and give them to them after the funeral. And I was like, woo, I don't have much time. How am I going to pull this off, you know? Am I going to go shopping and find just the right thing and all of this? And I tried to say like, oh, you know, that's a good idea. I'll do that later this week or whatever it is. And it came again, and it was like, you need to do this right now. And strangely, I could. I don't even remember what was going on with my kids and the house and everything, but I could. So I immediately left. And as I started driving, I felt the impression, you need to go straight to JCPenney's. To JCPenney. And don't you love how, maybe it's just me, but sometimes I hear people say, like, they put a plural on the end of a store. So JCPenney becomes JCPenney's, and notice how it just came out. I'm going to leave it for your enjoyment. Oh my word. So I had this impression, go to JCPenney. And JCPenney isn't a place where I normally shop at all. This is not a place where I would think to go, not even for a minute. And I was like, okay. I walk into JCPenney, and literally right there on the first counter that I come to are these matching mom and daughter lockets. And I'm like, whoa. Whoa. So I buy them quickly. I go home. I print a little picture and try to get the picture just the right size. I put it in the lockets, and I take it with me. And I made sure that they got these lockets, mom and daughter. And it's so interesting because I'm friends with the family. I'm all of these things, right? And I never heard like, oh my word, those lockets were heaven sent or nothing, you know, like all of this stuff. It's funny that I thought that maybe I would. I just want you to notice how trying to drop our ego and basic need for being recognized is constantly in competition with each other, right? If you're trying to get out of ego, if I wasn't in ego, I wouldn't have thought that. Interesting. But we have this need. And I think what was even bigger for me is that because it came so strongly for me, that I thought, oh man, like certainly that's going to be like a big deal, right? So time went on and no big deal, right? Another day, whatever, it moves on. And fast forward in life, maybe by 10 years, I am chatting with that mother. And she literally said, you know, Mish, she wore that locket every day for a really long time. Oh my gosh. Right? Like what? It's so crazy what that does for our human soul to be thanked, to be recognized. But it is such a tender spot and a tender space, right? And that story alone like helps me check into like, wow, do good. And it doesn't matter if you ever hear about it ever. The thing is most of the time, the business of making a difference is actually a thankless job, as it should be. The people who need help the most do not have the ability to make sure that you're thanked. Here's another way of thinking about thanks and it coming back to us. There's a story that is a classic. It's called The Mansion, and I love it so much. It's a really good one to read around Christmas time for two reasons. I think it keeps us in check, like recenters us with all of the getting that's happening at Christmas. But if I remember right, I think that the story begins, in the setting of Christmas. So it's a great story to read anytime. But anyway, it's called The Mansion. It's a classic. It's not long, but it's a story about this man who does so much on earth. He gives to charities. He's so rich. He's like, his name is everywhere, all of these things, right? And he dies and he goes to heaven. And as he goes to heaven, he kind of meets up with this angel. And this angel takes him and a group of other people who have recently arrived to heaven. And he's taking them around and sort of dropping them off at their houses, the houses that have been, quote, prepared for them, right? And each house that they get to is different, like different sizes, different styles, different levels of luxury. So all of these things vary across the board. And he's starting to put it together that based on the work that people did on earth, that they are receiving sort of a reward in the place that was prepared for them, right? Their mansion, right? And so he starts thinking, oh my word, like my house is going to be the biggest in all of heaven. It's going to be the best. I can't wait to get there. And he's the very last one to be dropped off. And the angel, they arrive at this house and it is like a shack. And he's like, what? He's like, I gave all that money and started that hospital. And the angel said, and were you recognized for it? Was your name on the hospital? And he's like, yes. And she's like, okay. And then he goes on to like make a list of things like that. And she said, sir, you've already been recognized for all of those things. This house is here representing all of the things that you did that you were never recognized for. Ooh. Ooh. I think we could stop at that story alone and just say, like, okay, we're good. Like, we don't need to be recognized, right? But again, we go back to that push and pull of what is just naturally built inside of us. It's something I think that we really do need to overcome that need and to be able to do things because we see the higher purpose. There's a movie called One Life that's kind of newly released. If you haven't seen it, put it on your list. It's a great family show. It's so good. So it's a reenactment of a true story about Nicholas Winton. And Nicholas Winton is a man who, back in the days of World War II, he was a young stockbroker. And he could not bear the thought of doing nothing during the war. And so, living in England, for his sort of holiday, he traveled to Czechoslovakia, which is occupied at this point by Nazi Germany, just to see if there was anything that he could do to help the situation. And he arrives there and he takes note of everything that's happening. And there's this camp of people who are starving and who are not being taken care of. And they are trying to leave the country and the borders are closed. And so this man, Nicholas Winton, starts to learn that there's a way that he can get the children out of the country. And the parents, knowing that there's a small chance that they will survive if they stay, right? Winter was coming and they knew that war was raging and there was just a very small chance that they would even survive. Nicholas Winton had arranged for 669 children in different transports to leave Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia. And he has them sent to England. And he had all of these families lined up in England that would place them or adopt them. And the hope was, keep them for a little bit. And then once their parents can come and find them, that's the hope. But really, these children were just placed with these families and they raised them. And this man, Nicholas Winton, for 50 years, told almost no one about this event. He didn't need the fanfare. He didn't walk around talking about it. And the kids were so little that they didn't even know and understand how they fully got out of the situation. How their lives went from being with mom and dad in a different country to now being somewhere completely different in a different family. They didn't know and understand that completely. So 50 years later, this guy's wife pulls out his journals of it. And I think she contacted the BBC. They had this amazing moment that was on live television because they had written to all of the children that they could find. And they had a bunch of people show up at the studio. And they gave this tribute to this man and recounted what he had done. They filled the studio with all of these children that he had saved that are now adults. And it was such an overwhelmingly beautiful, emotional moment for him, where he was completely recognized for the good that he had done 50 years earlier. 50 years. And he had this air about him because he's since been interviewed by, 60 Minutes and lots of news company, all of these things. After I saw One Life, I actually kind of looked it up a little bit, and there was a documentary done about this. So this story kind of, became big and it's resurfacing again. And he has this air about him that in the moment, he was really just doing what was right. His heart is overflowing from the gratitude and from the magnitude of the situation. But it is incredible that he wasn't seeking for it. It wasn't what he needed to fulfill him. It was just an incredible thing. And then to sit back and to see the survivors and their families now number 5,000 people. 5,000 people. Because he decided that he needed to do something. He needed to take action. Isn't that incredible? It's just such a lesson in recognition and in helping us see that we don't always see the impact that we have. We don't always walk around and, tally that up. It's impossible. It's impossible, especially if you were a doer of good deeds. If you are actually living your life in a way where you're trying to help others, it's impossible. So here's another twist on why we do things for other people. We do them because it actually changes us. And this is kind of like a revealing and vulnerable story. It's very short. But back in my early days of starting My Friend Misha, I had a YouTube channel. And man, I was all over the place with this YouTube channel, and YouTube algorithm had no idea what I was doing because I would throw at it. 1 week I was doing something parenting. 1 week I was doing like natural cures. Another week I was doing like a recipe or a family game. I mean, it was just crazy. And everybody said like, you need to niche down. And I just struggled so much to anyway. So I was doing this YouTube channel. And I remember this one day in particular because it had been mounting that I was doing all of this work and I wasn't seeing any of the benefits. Like I wasn't seeing growth. I wasn't seeing, subscribers or people watching my videos. It was super hard. And the only reason I was doing it is because I felt compelled to do it. Like I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was fulfilling my purpose, right? It really felt like I was called to do that. And there was a day when I got on to check like the day after, like how many people had watched my YouTube video. You guys, I'm not kidding you. There was only one view. And I knew that one view could have just been me. And it was kind of like I had been going like with it for so long. And it was just like the moment where it broke me. Like I cried and I was so sad. I was literally so sad because I was trying so hard. And in my heart, I really had an altruistic position. Like I wasn't trying to do it to make money, or I was really just trying to help people. And I was kind of cringy and terrible at it. But that's how we learn, right? That's how we learn. And I was trying, and I was putting a lot of effort in. And that's when it burns, right? That's when it burns the most and it hurts, is when you're really trying to do something like Dorothy Lang. Like you're really trying and it never comes forward, right? And the thing is yeah, later, my YouTube channel grew a little bit, whatever. I kind of gave up on it before it started really growing, and which is funny and interesting to think about, right? I kind of moved on. And what I kind of take from it, because there are a ton of people that have now been helped from some of the videos that are on there, but what I really take away is my own growth and how much I really did grow. How much you grow from editing yourself and watching yourself speak and realizing that maybe you should do some public speaking, to be able to do this better. And all of the ways that you are challenged with technology. Like that was a big thing for me. And it was like every day I'm just overcoming that. Every day I'm learning something new, and I'm doing crazy things that I never would have thought that I would be doing. And I was doing that. So It's wild. And the truth is that when you are trying to make a difference, okay, whether it's landing or not, whether it lands now or in 50 years or in longer than that, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what really matters is if it makes you a better person. If it's changing you and helping you grow, it's working. It's working. And we actually do have scientific proof that the more we care about the happiness and well-being of our fellow humans, that the happier we get. So it's a pleasant side effect of trying to make a difference. One quote that I love so much says, "Talk sweetly to your loved ones so that they will know how to talk sweetly to themselves." Oh my word, right? Do you ever think about that, the way that it would just sit and fit so neatly into this conversation? That when we take care of other people around us, even if they never really realize the way that you're taking care of them, they know what it's like to be a well cared for person. And that's the way that they live life from that point forward. By being cared for themselves and also the way that they care for other people, because it simply changes them, even if it's just an undercurrent. Do you remember It's a Wonderful Life, the Christmas movie? I know that I've talked about it on the podcast before, and why not talk about it again? We love this movie. This movie is a classic for a very good reason. But it's really amazing to me how George is about to just give up. He's just about to give up. And he does not see the impact that he has. He doesn't even understand the impact that he has. And then how beautiful it is that he gets a glimpse of what life would be like without him. And life does move forward and life moves on. And in It's a Wonderful Life, they paint it that, the whole community is like, worse off because he's not around. But what really is true is that your community and your closest knit people, their lives would be completely different without what you give to them in huge, monumental ways. And the way that we function in our tight-knit group, in our tight-knit circle, the way we function allows us to serve a bigger purpose in this great big world. Remember that. Whether it's you or someone else in your circle that you are allowing to sort of spread their wings and fly and be the Dorothy Lang that goes out and photographs this and documents history the way that it should be. Or someone like, Nicholas Winton. What's so cool about that story is that the woman behind the scenes was his mother. She was the one on the phone at home and trying to help him make, and he would go back and forth to the Czechoslovakia and he'd go back to, England. And she was the one kind of running base camp. Interesting that the story is about Nicholas Winton, right? Ooh, it's like, it explodes in my chest. For the very reason that if we could all really check in to the difference we make when we do the things that only we can do. It's huge. So if you have the ability to make a difference in someone's life, do it. Simple acts of kindness can go a long way in making someone's day brighter, especially when they are struggling. Your actions can bring joy and make a difficult day a little brighter. Remember, giving doesn't come with strings attached. And maybe it doesn't really matter as long as you feel good about what you're doing and doing what you can with love. because you know we talk about all the time on the podcast when we check into elevated emotions. That is the science behind why it changes us, why it changes the world around us. Aesop said, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." And my friend, I genuinely hope with my whole heart that in this podcast that you can see that when you just do good and you hold the secret thought that you are making a difference, even if you don't always know about it, that you have more power than you think you do. I hope that you found a great takeaway from this episode. Make sure that you subscribe to the Mindset Check so that you never miss an episode. Just a little reminder that you can support the Mindset Check podcast by shopping our Amazon link at amazon.com/shop/my friend Misha. And don't forget to reach out with a "Hey Mish, I would love to respond to whatever is in your heart." Before we go, I want to leave you with a quote that is also somewhat of an affirmation. Your impact on other people is bigger than you think. Someone still giggles when they think of that funny thing you said. Someone still smiles when they think of the compliment you gave them. Someone silently admires you. The advice you give has made a difference for people. The support and love you've offered others has made someone's day. Your input and opinions have made someone think twice. You're not insignificant and forgotten. Your existence makes a positive difference, whether you see it or not. Thanks for spending time with me, my friend. Until next time.